Hey, this is Mr. Mola with lesson 4-3, writing equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. All right, so first part of this is we're going to focus on parallel, then we'll switch back to perpendicular, and then we'll go back to parallel and back to perpendicular. So if we remember, your teachers have probably asked you what do parallel lines look like, and your response was probably like railroad tracks or field goal posts or something like that, which is 100% correct. But the thing we have to remember for today's lesson, that parallel lines, since they never touch, like railroad tracks and field goal posts and stuff like that, they always have the same slope. Okay? So parallel lines, they'll be the same as long as they have the same slope, which makes sense, because even if it's angled, if a slope is increasing if a line is increasing by the same amount, then two lines with the same slope would never touch. So here's parallel lines. And then perpendicular lines are pretty much the opposite. Okay, so they cross, but they cross kind of special. So they have to cross at 90-degree angles. Okay, so that means they look something like this. So they're always crossing at a 90-degree angle. And then for slope, which is what we care about again, they're going to have what's called opposite reciprocal slopes. And so that means opposite, we're referring to the sign. Like if it's positive, then the other slope is going to be negative. If it's negative, then the other slope is going to be positive. And reciprocal means we're going to flip the fraction. So if it was x over y, we're going to flip it to y over x. Okay? So parallel is a little easier to see because it's exactly the same. Perpendicular is a little tougher because of the opposite reciprocal. So first, we have three lines here. And we're going to just figure out what the slope is and see which ones are parallel. So let's just call this line 1, line 2, and line 3. Okay, so two of them are going to be parallel to each other. So let's make them say y equals, so it's a little easier to see the slope. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So then I get 4y equals negative 3x plus 6. I'm going to divide both sides by 4. So then I get y equals negative 3/4 x. 6 over 4 is the same as 3 over 2. Okay, so our slope on this first one is negative 3/4. So if we're looking for another one, since this is all parallel, that's what the question asks, we're looking for another one that has negative 3/4 as the slope. Okay, so let's look at line number 2 here. So same thing, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So I end up with 4y equals negative 3x plus 12. Divide by 4, divide by 4, and we got lucky it's these first two. Because then once I divide both sides by 4, I get negative 3/4 x plus 3, and there it is, negative 3/4. So lines 1 and 2 are going to end up being parallel because both of their slopes are negative 3/4. If I end up looking at the other one, subtract 4x from each side, subtract 4x from each side, 3y equals negative 4x plus 12. And I divide by 3, well, then we see we don't get negative 3/4, we get negative 4/3. So those are not parallel, they're not perpendicular, they're not anything, they're just two different slopes. So lines 1 and 2 are going to be parallel. If you look at the second page here, now it's asking for which ones are going to be perpendicular. So now we're going to do the same thing and we're going to figure out what the opposite reciprocals are. Okay, so here, on A, again, we'll call this line 1, line 2, line 3. I'm going to subtract 3x from each side, so I have 4y equals negative 3x plus 6. Divide by 4. Divide by 4, so I get y equals negative 3/4 x plus 3 over 2. So I figured out my slope is negative 3 over 4. And so what's perpendicular to negative 3 over 4? Remember, we're going to take the opposite, so positive, and the opposite and then the reciprocal of 3 over 4 is 4 over 3. So we're looking for a line that has a slope of positive 4 over 3, and that'll give us the perpendicular line. So let's look at number 2 here. So negative 4y equals negative 3x. Plus 12, again, divide by negative 4. So y equals positive 3/4 x minus 3. So now this one I got negative 3/4 and positive 3/4. Well, those are opposite, but they're not the reciprocal. Okay, so again, negative 3/4, positive 3/4. They did the good job being the opposite, but 3/4, you flip it upside down, is not 3/4. So now we're going to have to look at this last one and see which one it's going to be. So I got negative 3y equals negative 4x plus 12. Divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. And so I get y equals positive 4/3 minus 4. And there it is. So positive 4/3. So then we end up finding out that lines 1 and line 3 end up being perpendicular. Negative 3/4 and positive 4/3 are opposite reciprocals, so they are perpendicular to each other. All right, if we look at this page is all asking which lines are parallel. So 1 and 2, they have a graph for us, so maybe we can kind of tell they're all kind of a little close to each other, but you can just kind of figure out the slope and kind of see which ones are parallel then. So if I look at like this first dark black line here, looks like my slope is up 1, up 2, up 3 over 1. So that one's 3 over 1 for the first one. Here it looks like I'm going up 1, up 2, up 3, up 4 over 1 for the second one. And then here 1, 2, 3, 4 again over 1. So we figured out that the slope of A was 3 over 1. The slope of B is 4 over 1. The slope of C is 4 over 1. So then we end up knowing B and C are parallel because they're both 4 over 1. Okay, kind of the same thing for number 2 here. So if I look at line A here, we end up going down 1, down 2, down 3, down 4, over 1, over 2. So I get negative 4 over 2. If I look at B, I get down 1, down 2, down like 2.5. Why would they do that to us? So 2.5 over 1. And then here, it looks like I'm going to get down 1, down 2 over 1. So this one's kind of tricky here. So down 2 over 1. So at a quick glance, it looks like none of these are parallel. But if we look a little closer, we'll see that negative 4 over 2 simplifies to negative 2. And negative 2 over 1 also simplifies to negative 2. So they're both negative 2 once we simplify them. So lines A and C end up being parallel. All right. 3 and 4 kind of look exactly like what we've been doing. We just need to figure out their slopes, subtract them, doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and see which slopes end up being the same. So here, if I look at line A, I'm going to try and do this in my head here. So 2 minus a negative 1 is 3. 2 minus a negative 4 is 6. So I get 3 over 6 for line A. Line B here, I get 1 minus a negative 3, which is 4. 5 minus a negative 5, which is 10. So I got 3 over 6 and 4 over 10. And then here I have negative 1 minus a negative 3, which is 2. And 2 minus a negative 2, which is 4. So none of these are simplified, so we're going to have to simplify all these now. So 3 over 6 is the same as 1/2. 4 over 10 is the same as 2 over 5. And 2 over 4 is the same as 1/2. So we end up seeing that A and C are both parallel because their slopes end up being 3 over 6, which is the same as 1/2, and 2 over 4, which is the same as 1/2. Okay? Number 4 here, kind of the same thing. So I'm going to do these in my head a little bit here. So 1 minus 5 is negative 4. 2 minus a negative 2 is positive 4. Line B here, 4 minus 3 is 1. And then 3 minus a negative 4 is 7. And then I have negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10. and then 2 minus a negative 3, which is 5. So we got to simplify these again. So that gives us negative 1. That gives us 1 over 7, so that can't be simplified, and this gives us negative 2. So my slope for line A is negative 1. My slope for line B is 1 over 7. My slope for line C is negative 2. None of those are the same, so none of them are parallel to each other. So I wanted to show you that one because that might actually be an answer in your book today on your homework. None could be an option there. Okay, numbers 5 and 6 are pretty similar to what we did on the first page here. So I'm going to look at one of these. Let's do line A, or let's look at number 5. So if I get this by itself, so I'm going to end up subtracting 9 from each side. So I have 4x minus 9 equals negative 3. Divide by negative 3. So I have negative 4/3 x plus 3 equals y. So I have negative 4/3 x as my slope. Okay, let's look at B here. Do this one in red. 8y equals negative 6x plus 16. Divide both sides by 8. So I got y equals negative 3/4 x plus 2. So negative 4 over 3, negative 3 over 4, not parallel to each other. So we got to look at line C. They're making us do work here now. Got to do all of them. So same thing, 4y equals negative 3x plus 9. Divide by 4, divide by 4. So y equals negative 3/4 x plus 9 over 4. So now I can look, and if I look at line B, my slope was negative 3/4, and I look at line C, my slope was negative 3/4. So that means lines B and C are going to end up being parallel to each other because their slopes are both negative 3/4. All right, 7 and 8. So very important we read directions here. So it gives us a point or equation here, and it gives us a point. So we need to figure out what the new y-intercept is. So I would go back and do point slope that we learned last time. And we have all the information we need. We know our slope is 1/3. We know our x is 3. We know our y is negative 1. We just need to figure out our new b. So they give you this b here, and that's really just there to mess you up. It's just saying, hey, here's a line that's parallel. Give me a new line that's parallel to that point that goes through here. But a lot of people get confused by that number at the end. So I just like to get rid of it right away. We don't need it. It's literally just there to kind of confuse you. All right, so y minus y1. So that means y minus negative 1, which we turn into y plus 1, equals my slope. Since I know these lines are parallel to each other, my slope is 1/3. And then x minus 3. So I'm going to distribute. So I get y plus 1 equals 1/3 x, and 1/3 times negative 3 is negative 1. And then I have a plus 1 over here, so I end up subtracting 1 from both sides. So y equals 1/3 x, negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. So I know that this line and this line end up being parallel to each other. Same thing on number 8. So I know my x and my y. So y minus a negative 2 turns into y plus 2. My slope they gave me was negative 2. And then x minus 1. So same thing, 2 steps of math here. I'm going to distribute. So y plus 2 equals negative 2x. Careful, negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2. And then I have a plus 2 over here, so I'm going to end up subtracting 2 from both sides. So y equals negative 2x, really plus 0. You don't have to write plus 0 if you want, but 2 minus 2 is 0. So we end up figuring out that that line and that line are parallel to each other. All right, and I will make another video here that explains perpendicular lines and perpendicular slopes a little more.